Hi, my name's Paulette. I'm a student ambassador with Clovis Community College. You've probably seen me before in some other videos, so I'm not going to make you sit through my intro again. Instead, I'd like to wish you a happy International Day of Sign Languages, and I'd like to hand it over to our special guest today. If you could please introduce yourself.
Sure. Hello, Paulette. Thank you so much for giving me the chance to be here today. My name is Omar Ruiz, and I teach American Sign Language here at Clovis Community College.
And if I could ask you what other schools you've taught at, maybe how long you've been teaching?
Sure. Well, before I came to work here at Clovis, I've been here for 2 years. I used to teach at Reedley College, and also College of the Sequoias. All together about 5 years, almost 5 years.
Okay, great. So we're going to get into the first question, and so that's going to be, what inspired you to teach American Sign Language?
Yeah, boy, that is a good question. I'd have to say, a long time ago, I started working in the EDD department, and I worked there for 7 years until I was given the opportunity to work with deaf people and help see if I could benefit their situation. And I love doing that. I love meeting with the those that were in charge. I love the whole culture of that. But there was one thing that was difficult was meeting with those in charge, meeting with the bosses and convincing them of some of the things that we needed. It took time for them to trust me. Interpreter had a question, sorry. It was difficult to communicate with them. So they didn't know if they needed to provide an interpreter sometimes. So it could be a source of frustration. So I decided that I needed to change my profession. I wanted hearing people to have more exposure to deaf culture. And I wanted to really be able to benefit the deaf community as well.
That's amazing. So next question, we're going to have, where did you attend college, and what was the most challenging thing you encountered while pursuing your education?
Well, I graduated from Fresno State. I got my BA and my MA, also interpreter question. My BA and my MA there. And then after my second year, I started being involved with the EDD department with that program. And I just had a passion for my education. I really love to help people, and that's really something that inspired me. Boy, what did I confront? The challenges, like the requests from the interpreter for interpreters. Boy, that was a struggle again and again. I would have friends text for me. And sometimes it would be a struggle in a group situation too. And we wouldn't have an interpreter in a group situation, or it'd be a struggle for the interpreter. So well, like when we'd go to a place, a certain location, we'd I'd be the only deaf person there, or like it'd be an event related to sound specifically, like a music concert or something, you know. And sure, I enjoy music. Um, Sometimes I even study music, but that can be a challenge, just the cultural difference. So that's the sort of thing you'd have to confront and try to make the best of. But that was something. What was that interpreter question? What was that last you said? I'm so sorry. The class. But I've always had interpreters in each class with me.
Okay. So the next one, still kind of, I guess, education centered, is going to be what is some advice that you have for students studying your major?
Boy, that is a good question. Thanks for asking that. My BA is in sociology. Oof. And once again, I was the only one in that department who was deaf. One of the things that I know I'd like to advise others is use a lot of visual aids. So if you don't have an interpreter for you, that can be a big help. Put something like that on a movie or something that you can see. And that can really help someone with their assignments. Or if you have a movie that has closed caption, that can be so helpful to a deaf student to make sure they have access to it. And if a student records themselves, encourage that student to put closed captioning on their own video for when they show the class so that the deaf student can have access to that. And that can really accommodate the needs of the deaf. And then always request an interpreter in advance. That can really be a scheduling difficulty. Like for myself, I'd request an interpreter, and that'd definitely help me to get involved and feel like I'm one of the class.
Great. So the next thing we're gonna go over is, let me see here, sorry. Okay, so what are some common misconceptions about sign language or those who communicate primarily through sign language?
Well, there are a few misconceptions, sure, about ASL. ASL is not universal. It's not a universal language. Yeah, each country, almost each country has their own sign language. And we tend to use like a sign for money, we sign it like this. Not interpreter question for clarity, sorry. So the sign for money, people tend to sign it like this. And that's not the sign. That's not the real sign. That's a miming. Okay, interpreter understands. Thank you, sorry. Yeah, this is not the sign for money. That's like Skrilla. No, no, no. The sign that we tend to think of that we use sometimes an interpreter will use that. That is not correct. In ASL, it has very specific grammar and very specific syntax. It has a very specific vocabulary. It has verbs and nouns, all of the things that a language has. And it's true that there are fewer vocabulary words in sign language compared to English. But we have in our language the addition of classifiers. And those can really expand the meaning of a specific word that we'll have and the way we think of it or view that word. But in ASL, we can translate everything that any other language can.
Well, that's really interesting. For me, I've always been interested in languages, different types of languages, and how that can really change how we perceive the world in a way. And I think that's really interesting and really cool. So the next one is going to be, and this is our last question, something I think is really important. So, so some students may be in the mindset of, well, I don't need to learn sign languages because, you know, I don't need them to understand, right? So why should I? Of course, you can ask that about any language, really. But what do you have to say to students that don't maybe understand the importance of sign language or how it may relate to them?
Well, give me a second to think about that. Let's see. Well, let me give you an example. Like if there was a student that I was going to meet, and I do meet a lot of students, and maybe they haven't met a deaf person before, and I can help that person with fingerspelling or with signing, and it'll expand their knowledge of the world. And that's a way that they won't be missing out, you know, or they can bond with a deaf person and that'll expand both of their worlds. So if you know sign language, it promotes unity and it expands your horizons. It also supports the deaf better just in general in the deaf community. So ASL also provides a lot of visual concepts for a language. It really helps you to imagine, envision, picture the language itself. Let me offer an example. Sometimes people will say, I can't hear, but I like to watch the interpreter as they interpret because they seem so expressive. And even though I couldn't hear everything, I still understood what they were talking about because the hearing person is watching the interpreter. ASL can be so clear without fully even understanding the language of ASL itself. But ASL truly is valuable. I mean, you just never know if you're going to have a deaf child, for example. If your child's born deaf, you might have a deaf niece or nephew. And worse things can happen than that. Sometimes we see deaf people who struggle. They'll have terrible struggles, and you might be able to encourage that deaf person with your own sign language. So ASL truly is a valuable thing for a lot of different reasons. The deaf community, deaf support, and encouraging other people.
Thank you. I think I'm so glad that, you know, people watching this will be able to, you know, receive that message. Maybe they hadn't thought about it before. And I really hope that, you know, this video does inspire people, you know, to learn a new language and to support, you know, a community. But yeah, thank you. And thank you for making a difference. And yeah.
Oh, thank you so much for having me here.